Welcome everybody to Design for Drupal Boston 2020. I wish that we were doing this in person, but we are in trying times here, and we really appreciate everybody joining virtually. Just to give everyone some background, we had originally been forced to cancel the event in Boston due to COVID-19. We did so pretty early on. We were not optimistic that we would be able to do what we're doing today. And I just wanted to thank everybody in the community for reaching out and really kind of nudging us to do something. I think we were, for a while, really unsure as to how we would move forward. So thank you for everybody's support. Let me just get things situated here. What we're doing this year is we're switching it up. Rather than having a long event today, we're going to have a keynote followed by a 24-hour sprint. But what we're doing is we're taking all the sessions that we normally have during the 3 days of what is typically Design for Drupal Boston and spreading those out throughout the year. And so what we've decided to do is have a monthly webinar. And that is essentially what you would experience as a session in person. So we're really excited to have that set up. We're continuing to add new ones every day. And our hope is that we'll have a full year's worth of monthly webinars filled out. The keynote is being recorded, just as a reminder in case people need to drop off early. The last thing that I just wanted to cover, in addition to COVID-19, we're kind of in the midst of the Black Lives Matter movement, and I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that Design for Drupal is committed to promoting equity and inclusion in the Drupal community. And as part of this, we want to encourage everyone here today to support the Black Lives Matter movement to affect positive change. And a few ways you can do this is just listening to others and educating yourself about anti-racism and researching those to learn more about them. Be an ally, be a friend, stand up for people who are being discriminated against, talk to your friends, talk to your family and neighbors, and really just educate yourself about what all of this means. This is nothing new. This has been going on for 400 years. Explore your own biases. Go out and vote. Patronize Black-owned businesses. You could volunteer for social justice nonprofit. You can donate. You can build websites and applications that promote and support the Black Lives Matter movement. And there are a number of other things that you can do. We've included a link in our slide that explains how you can do that from a post from the Drupal Association as well. Today's keynote is being delivered by Cristina Chumillas from Lullabot, and it is focused on a new backend admin theme in Drupal 8 and 9. And we're really excited to have her here today. Very fortunate. In fact, she's coming to us from Barcelona, Spain. So we will get to that shortly, but just to review, if you need to reach out to her after the keynote, her contact information is on the slide. Following today's keynote, there will be a 24-hour global contribution day, and it is focused on the work that Cristina is doing with the Claro theme, which is the new backend admin theme for Drupal. I think the only thing that I'll point out is that on the previous slide, Leslie, I think we mistakenly put Christina's Twitter incorrectly. We'll update that in the slides, but just know that I don't think that actually is the correct one. Sorry about that. Figuring things out as we go. 24-hour contribution day. So help us if you are able. We're going to have a quick support session right following this presentation. You can stick around, and Leslie and some others will be available to help folks out with getting started if you've never contributed before. If you have contributed before and you want to help, we need designers, we need developers, we need people who can help with documentation. There are a lot of resources for you to help out with, and there is a contribution day page on the Design4Drupal website that you can visit that kind of outlines everything there. And so we'll do our best to help out. Cristina will be available, as well as others in the Drupal Slack channels that she's a part of. So we'll go over those details a little bit later, but the Design4Drupal Contribution Day sprint page is a good place to go. Like I said, we're going to be doing webinar series throughout the year, starting on July 8th with Mike Herschel. He'll be doing a webinar on Olivero, which is the new front-end theme. On August 12th, Jason Palmental will be doing a webinar on Getting Graphic, which is reinventing design with type on the web. And on September 9th, Miriam Suzanne, who was actually one of our previous keynote speakers, is doing a session on CSS is rad, which is really exciting. We're glad to have her back. You can sign up for these webinars on our website, and you do need to sign up for them. We need to do that just to keep others who aren't supposed to be on those meetings out, and keep everyone who wants to be in. And I'm going to turn it over to Leslie to pick up with some of the community events going on this year.
Thanks, Patrick, and welcome everybody to Design4Drupal Boston 2020. The community events, DrupalCon was going to be held in Minneapolis in May. It's now DrupalCon Global, which we're really excited about. That'll be held July 14th to 17th. That's virtual. There is a minimal fee that needs to be, you need to register for that, but it is very exciting. There's a lot of great content there for everybody to enjoy around the globe. NetCamp, which is, our camp is usually held at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. One of our local camps, NetCamp New England Drupal Camp, is going virtual. That's November 6th and 7th, so we look forward to seeing everybody there. There is a new community events page, drupal.org/community/events. The idea of that page is to host, to have a place where you can go look at all the virtual events around the globe, also meetups and things of that nature. So definitely, as that page gets more content and grows, that'll be a great resource for everybody around the globe to go and see what's happening, not only in their area, but all the virtual events happening around the globe that we can all join. There are a lot of local meetups in areas across the globe. Our local one, our Boston Drupal meetup, is held the first Tuesdays of the month. They are now virtual, but there are events like that, meetups like that across the globe. So if you're new to Drupal, make sure you check out the camps, the virtual events, the meetups, because that's how you network. The Drupal community is great, and that's where you're going to be able to network and meet a lot of the individuals that can help you in your Drupal journey. The code of conduct. We are not in-person event this year, but the code of conduct still applies and is still very relevant. One of the great strengths of our community is our inclusiveness, making everybody feel welcome and included. It's everybody's responsibility to make sure that they do that and that they treat everybody with dignity and respect. There is a link on the Design4Drupal website in the footer /code-conduct. That is, we follow the Drupal code of conduct, so you can read that code of conduct there. If there are any concerns, and we certainly hope that there aren't, with the Q&A, with interacting on the Slack channel during the sprint, during the code contribution day. If there are any issues at all, contact Patrick or myself. Our number is here on this slide. It's 908-4-Drupal. So feel free to reach out if there's any concerns at all. We want to definitely thank our digital sponsors. We had a lot of companies step up to help us with running these virtual events and the webinars, going on throughout the year. Let me just mention everybody quickly: Redfin Solutions, Lullabot, 108 Degrees, McPhee Design, Dev Collaborative, Oomph, Isovera, Talking Drupal, American Graphics Institute, and Oddbird. So thank you to everybody that's helping us out as a digital sponsor. And thank you to everybody that's participating and coming and watching this today, and that will be watching the recording. Spread the word about today's events. On social media, you can use hashtag D4D to share what's happening so that others who may not have heard about this event can join in as well. Thanks for joining us. And as I always say, remember to always be kind to everybody that you interact with. And that's in line with what Patrick spoke of earlier. And now I'm going to hand it back to Patrick, who is going to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thanks, Leslie.
Oh.
Yeah. So today's keynote speaker is coming to us from Barcelona, Spain, and is what I like to refer to as a unicorn, and that's that rare somebody who bridges the divide between design and development. She started her career in graphic design and illustration, and later learned to code when she was introduced to Drupal. Today, she is a co-organizer of the Drupal Admin and UI JavaScript Modernization initiative, and a Drupal core usability maintainer, as well as the track chair for DrupalCon Europe. In Barcelona, she is involved with the local community organizing Drupal and other tech-related events. But lately, she has been occupied with front-end projects working at Lullabot, and with her work on the new Drupal core admin theme, Claro, which she will be talking about today, and was added as an experimental theme in Drupal 8.8. So with that, please help me in welcoming Cristina Chumillas to our virtual stage. You might just need to unmute yourself, Cristina.
Okay, what about now?
It's great.
Can you hear me? Perfect. So thank you for having me here in this event. This is great. Today I'm going to talk about So I'm going to talk about the present and future of the Drupal Admin UI. But I would like to ask anybody if you have any question, if you have any suggestion about anything that I'm saying, please reach to me via Slack, via Twitter. My Twitter account is my surname, basically, is Chumillas on Twitter. So just ping me on Twitter or anywhere. I will be happy to try to help anybody to get involved, because disclaimer, my actual goal is to get as many people as I can contributing to Drupal in general. So you are aware about that now. So let's talk about the Admin UI initiative. But first, let's check on a little bit the past. Where are we coming from? This is actually a screenshot of Drupal 1, if I'm correct. As you can see here, developers actually created an interface where site builders could choose some things from the site. So from the beginning, both developers and site builders have been key roles on Drupal. Over the time, one of the key moments in Drupal history was the redesign of Views UI. Mark Drummond, a colleague of mine, actually made a great post about that. You can check in there, but he basically was explaining how important was this for site builders. And actually, this role, the site builder role, is a specific or one of the most important roles for Drupal. And it's been a key role for the success of Drupal and in making Drupal what it is right now, and how the reason why so many people actually started using it. But that's the thing. We have this developer role, we have this site builder role, but the focus for the user interface was actually site builders. And over the years, the product itself, Drupal, has changed completely over the time. And with the years, a new role was introduced. Actually, the content author was a role that started to gain more and more importance with bigger projects that we were having. And it means that the moment that you actually kind of give the keys of the project to the client, obviously you can maybe still make features later on, depends a lot on the project, but the moment that you actually give the project to the client, the person that is actually going to spend more hours on that user interface is going to be the content author or the content manager, for example, because we have here other roles. The most important ones or the more common ones are the content author and the content editor, but we have other roles here. And the interface that we have right now, unless you actually have, are you actually seeing the screenshot from Patrick here? Sorry, the smaller screen.
I can see the content screen.
Okay, perfect. Then in this screen, you can see that, for example, if we have just the default toolbar and you are not using the admin toolbar, you maybe have the shortcuts if you had time to actually create that for the site builder. The site builder has had enough time for creating that and personalizing that for the user. Maybe the user might have permissions to edit menus, to edit some taxonomies, and a link to the content, and maybe a link to help. But the thing is that help is actually prepared for site builders also. So we have a UI that is not prepared for that users, and we need to think about that, because the more hours that you spend on a user interface, the more hours you're going to repeat the same tasks. And ideally, you should use less screens. So we should ideally create interfaces that are focused on these workflows. And nowadays, what actually users are expecting today, we could easily say that, well, let's just wait a minute. When we say users, I mean content editors. I'm not talking about writers, because for writing content, you will have a lot of tools, a lot of applications, a lot of things that will let you correct spelling errors or anything. But when we are talking about editors, content managers, these people nowadays, and almost everybody expects something, an experience that it's closer to an app, what we could say an app, something that it's closer to Google Docs, something like that, that basically don't rely only on HTML and CSS. And basically, we don't expect this anymore. This is perfect because this was perfect for some years ago, but maybe this is a little bit limited nowadays. But the thing is that the question that we have here is that, are we expecting something that is a solution Gutenberg-like from WordPress? Are we willing to have something like that? And more than that, are we able to have something like that? And another question regarding the user interface is, should we actually have a separate UI? This is actually one of the big questions. Should we have a completely separate UI for developers and site builders, because they have some tasks that are completely different from the ones for content authors and content editors? And actually, if you dig a little bit about that and you talk with someone that is actually selling Drupal, they will tell you for sure that what is actually helping them selling Drupal to a client is the tools and the interface that the client is going to have, these users, the content editors and the content managers, and anything related to that. This is what is actually selling Drupal. Which tools are they going to have, which workflows, the menu structure that they are going to have, the expectations that they have for that. This is what is actually going to sell Drupal. So now let me talk a little bit about the history of the Admin UI initiative. I should actually say Admin User Interface and JavaScript Modernization Initiative. And for the UK friends, here is a joke. And for the American friends, I'm not sure if you've seen the Z and the S. So let's just stick with the Admin UI initiative for now. And that's what I'm going to use from now on this session. So let's start a little bit with history. DrupalCon Vienna, where was actually most of this started. It was on 2017. And here, two group of people on each side started to think about that, about making changes on the user interface. On one side, a group of people started to talk about replacing the whole user interface with JavaScript. And on the other side, another group of people meet together, both in both and even a design sprint, talking about redesigning the whole user interface. And I'm not sure if you've seen this, but in both places, I'm talking about the whole user interface. So this isn't a spoiler. Moving forward on time, at DrupalCon Nashville, we actually came together, several people, and we planned a user study that actually, well, we were able to make a survey which more than 150 people participated in there. We actually had a card sorting session with over 200 people. We also made a comparative study, and a lot of people helped here. And we got a lot of feedback from here, but some things were actually repeated over the several answers. And the first one is, surprise, we needed a modern looking user interface. I mean, this is something that everybody was expecting. Was so clear that we had to do that. So basically, there is posted about that. And one of the key things here is that between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, we actually haven't changed the user interface at all, or maybe not that much. Here you can see, for example, on the left, you can see Drupal 7, and on the right, you can see Drupal 8. Obviously, there were changes, but basically, it was the same. So it doesn't mean that what it wasn't there, it was bad. 7 was actually a great design, but at the time, it was around 8-10 years old. And I mean, in web design and anything related, interfaces is one of the things that really get old really fast. And apart from that, there's going to be a refresh for the Bartik that I think it's even older with Olivero, but you will hear about that later on. Something else that came from this study that it was really obvious at the time also, it was that we needed a better media management. But since then, we have media library in core, so this was already a huge step. Something else that came from here is that we needed to simplify a really complex editing experience. But which one? So this is really fun, because at the time for us it was super clear. But the thing is that were we talking about panels, for example, were we talking about this kind of interfaces that were super complex? Well, we had layout builder later on. So maybe we're talking about paragraphs, because you know that you can actually nest a lot of paragraphs, and you end up with a huge form node where you almost don't see anything right now here, obviously, where you actually where they actually asking about this kind of interface where you actually can drag and drop something like Gutenberg, a solution close to that, or I don't know. There were a lot of interfaces that where people were actually having a lot of problems, and several of them needed several things. For example, let's say we have a recipe on mobile. If we have a solution that is Gutenberg-like, I'm not talking about a responsive version of that. I'm talking about structured data. For example, what if I want to read that data from an app that is helping me create the list for the grocery shopping or something like that? How Gutenberg is actually going to help on that. So several questions were actually opened here. Something else that came from that survey and this study, this user study, is that people actually had a lot of fear to save. But there were several reasons. The first one is what they actually were worried about how the content that they were saving was going to be seen. And we said, don't worry, we have a solution for that. We're going to make a Gutenberg solution, but better, because it's Drupal, we're going to do something better than that. And we actually showed that to the JavaScript side of the initiative. And they were like, cool, let's talk about that. How are we going to actually build something like that? If we're talking about structured content, maybe the place where this information is going to be consumed is really structured, and we can't actually have a free space to throw any kind of data in there. And we said, don't worry, we're going to start again. Let's talk a little bit more about that. And we decided that the next obvious step is that if they wanted to see the content, how it was going to look like, we were going to just show them that. And we decided that we were going to create a screen next to there, like break the screen in two sides. And we were going to let the user switch the preview for that screen. Responsive, cool. You can see the desktop, you can see the mobile version. But what if actually you're actually serving that data into an app? Are you actually, is your project going to have enough budget to actually create this preview also for a custom app? So this was actually opening a lot of questions. And related to this, people was also having a lot of fear at the moment to save, because they were kind of afraid of losing some data. I'm not sure if you have actually edited a lot of content in Drupal and you have seen that. You can actually go work on a node edit form, and after 30 minutes, just editing the content, uploading images and something like that, you click on the save button and it says, look, you can't save any of your work because someone else actually accessed that and saved the same node. So several things were around that. Actually, thanks to that, there was a conversation in New Orleans in 2019. There is actually, this is Drupal. Sometimes you just have to search for that. And there is actually a project that is actually implementing already the autosave, because we started discussing that on the contribute channel, and someone said, hey, but I have a project that is already doing that. And we meet at DrupalCon, and we had a really interesting conversation where we realized that Drupal is not that easy, because we needed to have something that was actually going to also solve problems like having a JavaScript interface to edit all this content. Also, Some people were talking about having concurrent editors. So there is an issue that is talking about all these things, and there is something that is already working. So feel free to go to access these issues, because this is really interesting. Something else that came from these studies, that it was clear that we needed a content role configuration for editors. And this is actually one of the first things that we made after these conversations, and we created an issue into the ideas issue queue. And the question was, let's just create this editor role, and we will call it editor. And some people just came in there and said, but hey, wait one moment. I'm not just going to have an editor. I'm just also going to have a content manager. So we need a content editor and a content manager. And what are actually the differences between each of them? Because they are actually going to have different permissions. And there is actually one issue that is creating this initial content editor role with a set of permissions. And that's basically the only thing that needs in there, is define the permissions for each role, and we'll be able to kick off all the work around that. This is actually the issue. This is actually the issue on the core ideas issue queue. Feel free to jump in there if you have any other thoughts. And then let's talk about this redesign that was so obvious, and we got actually so many feedbacks around this. But it wasn't that simple, even from the beginning, because we actually had to create a design that was going to be used also on the JavaScript user interface, but also by a Drupal theme that was going to have that is going to be run by the pages that weren't going to be updated to the JavaScript side yet. So basically, we could have, for example, the typical set of pages with Drupal, but then some of them could be replaced by this JavaScript interface. And as you can see, right now, this was using at that time Material UI. So we had to find a way to serve the same design to two different projects. And one of the key things in there is that we needed a new design for Drupal 9. So we needed something soon, and we couldn't spend that many time creating crazy things from scratch. So this is why we created the new theme, the new core administration theme called Claro. Basically, it's a clone of 7. And what we did was basically not throwing away all this work that has been done for 7, because after 7 was declared as stable, a lot of work like accessibility-wise, improving pages and all these things, and we weren't actually going to just throw away all these things. So we cloned 7, and we started replacing component by component. 7 was already organized on something close to what was a component version or component-wise, but we started to replace component by component, creating more components. As you can see here, we started with a header, also some of the fields in here, the text field and some of the buttons. And finally, we replaced most of the other components. Actually, if you use Claro right now, you will see that there are still some pages that are using 7 components. And something that actually was really useful doing that is that we were actually able to modernize the front-end development tools that we were using for the theme. It was the perfect moment to decide if we were going to use CSS or we are going to use Sass or something like that, because obviously we wanted what Sass was giving to us, like CSS variables and so on. So we decided that we were going to use CSS because in the future we are going to get rid of Internet Explorer, I hope at some point. And CSS by itself already has huge improvements over the CSS that we had a few years ago. So we integrated post CSS tools on the tools that we have, and it was fixed a while ago, and it's been improving over the last month. But something that I was saying is that we needed the same design in both UIs. And as you can see, both UIs were super different. One was 7, the other one was actually a material UI. So this is why we created a design system that was going to give instructions to these two places. And we chose Figma. Figma is a tool like Sketch, but Google Docs together. Not sure if you know it, but this is actually something that made a huge difference for us because we were several designers involved. We were distributed across the world on the United States, but also in Europe, on India. So we were people across the globe on different time zones. It was really useful to have the option to leave messages in there, some comments on each of the components. And this is actually something that for me was specifically a huge deal because you could actually make a design, leave it there, make a comment, just post a comment in there and say, hey, people, I've just designed this. What do you think? And the day after, you just go in there and actually someone has taken that design and has improved it. And this is something that as a designer, I didn't saw that on my design school and with my design colleagues. Obviously, there are people that is not like that, but a lot of the design community sometimes is more a competition rather than a community working together. And this, for the first time, made me see this opportunity within the Drupal community to share and to work together. So this project, it's not something that me or another designer have done. It's actually work from several designers and several people. Also, Figma has made something. Figma has something that is really useful. Is that the same work that you're doing is actually the same specifications, the specs that the developers are going to use. You can just go in there as a developer, click on something, and you're going to get all the information about the font family, font size, colors, and everything. You just have to share the URL for the document or even the page, and developers will just have to log in there and inspect it. And it's actually free for developers. And most important is a tool in the browser. It means that you can access that from a Linux, from a Windows, a Mac, wherever you are using. Something else that was important about Figma is that it is integrated with external style guides. And one of the next steps that we want to do here is integrate this design system with either Storybook, Fractal, I don't know. There are different options right now over the table, and we still have to decide. We have to finish first, make sure that Claros is stable, and after that, we're going to start talking about that. And Figma already has a lot of complements that integrates and automatize this process. And obviously, this is something really important if we actually want to serve the design to UI based on Fractal, or I don't know, maybe based on Vue, because another distribution is going to create their own user interface, and maybe they don't choose Fractal and they choose Vue, or maybe Claro, it is using this design system. So it had a lot of options, and having this style guide will let us have even several versions depending on the options that the tool is actually giving. If you don't have JavaScript, maybe, I don't know, you can have the less version, and maybe with Claro you have the left version. And with JavaScript thing on the right, you might be able to have other versions. It depends. So this is a really great tool. And if we talk about what's coming next for the Drupal, for the Admin UI initiative, there are several things. One of them is making site customizations for each site. A few, I would say years ago, there was a proposal, I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2 years ago, about removing the color module from core because actually nobody was maintaining it. And just a few months later, someone else created another issue on the ideas issue queue, actually saying that, come on, if we are using CSS variables right now, why don't we use that and replace a color module with a new module? I don't know, let's call it palette, for example, where we actually define several colors in there. And the user, the site builder, can actually choose which color. For example, your logo is red. You can maybe have all the buttons with red or orange or green. I don't know, for example. You should be able to actually change several things on the user interface. But that's not only good for Claro, that will be also good for front-end themes. What if you have a multi-site project where each of the sites actually have a different palette? You could set a different palette, and then a site builder is just choose between each of the palettes. And the designer can actually decide which of the colors work together with each other. And you don't have a color picker in there to make crazy combinations that also they are not accessible. But there's even more about that. What about having a dark mode? Those of you that are on the design world, you know how trendy right now it is. Almost for every app that you might have, there's a designer willing to revisit that with a dark mode. But this is opening another question. And who should be able to decide to choose the dark mode? Actually, the site builder or the user? Because you never know the context where you are. Maybe you don't have light around you. Maybe you have other problems. Like, for example, you might need high contrast mode, or you need a bigger font size or something like that. So the dilemma here was, who decides what? The site builder or the user? Are you going to give, I don't know, for example, there are some things that are obvious, like, for example, the font size or the palette. That is going to be something that ideally a designer should choose. Let's hope it's a designer. But what about the spacing, the cell padding between tables, where actually you want to see more content on one page, and you want to reduce the amount of space that you have between cells or between rows, so you get more content on each page? Who decides that? So those are things that are being discussed. And something else that is coming, I hope soon, and that is being discussed right now, are layout changes. As I said, what we actually did was just clone 7. It means that we are just inheriting. We are just reusing the same design that it was designed years ago. And we don't even have a max width for the admin interface. You can just use that, and you will see that it just goes all the page wide. So there are several things that we are planning to get rid of. For example, this header and this white background, for example. We are also planning to discuss what are we going to use to do with the sidebar, because there's a lot of people that is saying this sidebar is going to be useful on other pages of the user interface. But the thing is that the moment that you put this sidebar available on other places, you need to decide if this sidebar is going to have 20% width, 50% width. Actually, will people be able to move the sidebar to the left sidebar, or maybe one left and one right sidebar. So this is opening a whole new conversation. And something that we wanted to be sure that Claro was going to implement is the use of layers and to have a lighter interface. And I'm not sure if you know, Claro in Spanish means lighter or light. And this is something that we wanted to use the light and the spacing to actually communicate the different spaces that you have on the interface. So, for example, let's see this. This is an interface that is getting rid of this white background and is getting rid of the header. And is also moving some regions over there. This is actually a screenshot of Jean. Jean is one of the, it's a project that Sasha, one of the designers of the initiative, created. And it is great because he's exploring a lot of these changes on this, on this I would say, spin-off of Claro, because this is something that he's testing a lot of things that we could implement in the future in Claro. More things that are happening in Drupal, in the Drupal world that are not exactly related to the initiative itself, that they are outside the initiative. One of them is, for example, having a user dashboard. Yeah, in 2020, a user dashboard. I know this can sound really funny, but this is actually a super old issue. Obviously, it has a project that already is doing that. But the thing is that if we are able to create an editor role, we will be able to have a landing page for this editor role. Because just think a little bit right now, when you log to your Drupal user in your project, you just go to your user account. So it will be so easy to just fix this. It will be something like, I don't know, you might have a list of all the articles that you've made. I don't know, we have to discuss that. But this will be really simple if we have the editor role in core. And I don't know, a lot of people probably wouldn't even notice a change like that. Just assume that it is in there. Like, for example, the maintenance page or something like that. It's in there, it's in Drupal. So maybe something like that could be an improvement for the user interface. Something that is being discussed, but actually it's a really long conversation, and disclaimer, this doesn't have any solution yet. We haven't reached any decision yet, but probably we shouldn't reach a final decision, and there should be probably several proposals here and several initiatives. For example, there's a link to an ideas issue queue that is proposing to place Gutenberg in Drupal core. Obviously, this is a whole different conversation, but let's talk about a little bit about your projects. Think a little bit about the project that you usually have. You usually have landing pages, right? At least the home page is going to have a region that is going to go, I don't know, a section that is going to be full width, for example, some sections after that. But then maybe you will also have a blog post, which actually have a lot of text in there that might need some tools that you might not need on other places. But what about this kind of content types where we actually have structured data? What about a recipe or an author node or something like that? How many projects have you had that don't have at least two of these options? So it means that maybe we don't have to solve one of these things. Maybe we could solve each of these things on separate initiatives. So we could use maybe 4 modes or another solution. So this is something that always brings the same question, is that content strategy is a key thing for Drupal. Over time, the projects are bigger and bigger and bigger. And if we don't plan the content that we're going to have, maybe the project can end up being a mess. This is a really important thing. Key. The content is a key for Drupal. But also something really important is, where is this content going to be consumed? Are we going to read this content on a desktop, on a mobile phone, on an app? This app is going to be on our iPhone, or maybe is it going to be on our iWatch, or I don't know, the next Apple glasses, or on a fridge app? So there's this initiative. It's full of really, really smart people. I would say one of the most smart people that I know in Drupal are working at least a little bit in here. So they are doing incredible things here. Just follow that. And if you really want to help in Drupal moving forward, this is a key thing for the future of Drupal. And one last thing that I would really like to talk, and just to let you know that this conversation is happening, is fieldable fields. It has had a lot of names over the past, but let me just tell you one name that you maybe have heard a little bit more than that: paragraphs. How do you structure your content? What I was saying. How do you plan your notes, your content types? Which is a content type? What is a paragraph? What is a block? What is everything? So there's this group of smart people that each of them on their own side started different projects. And one day they started to talking to each other, and they decided to create this initiative. Right now it's not an initiative, sorry, it's an idea on the Ideas ICQ. There is actually a patch or a project that is already implementing a part of this. So I will take a look to that if I were you. This has a lot of future also. And I would like to finish this session with a few reflections because, as I said at the beginning, I would like to have some of you helping and contributing in Drupal. I would like you to think a little bit, if you were around when Drupal 7 was there, and see that Drupal 9 that is right now in here is nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with Drupal 7. And when I say that, I obviously am talking about the project, but I'm also talking about the community. So the moment that you want to create a project, the discussions that you had, or the kind of people that was choosing Drupal 7 is not the same people that is going to choose probably Drupal 8 or Drupal 9. The project to be affordable, to be something that makes sense for some people, Drupal 9 is not the right tool for them anymore. So it doesn't mean that Drupal 9 is not the right tool for a lot of projects. It just means that there are a lot of freelancers that are not around Drupal anymore. So the community has changed a lot over the last years. You can see on any Drupal event that the kind of people that is showing in there is different. Something else that I would like you to reflect a little bit is that, or to take into account, is that core workflows are slow. It means that sometimes they can be frustrating. A lot of people just get super annoyed because things are super slow. But the thing is that just take into account, for example, the example I was saying, to put the autosave project that we have right now in Contrib, to put that in core, right like it is right now. What about things like using that on a JavaScript admin interface or something like that? So Drupal core needs to be aware that it's solving the problem for at least the 80% of the cases. So we need to be sure that whatever we add to Drupal core it's not creating just a bigger project without actually any useful thing coming from there. For example, let's talk about the accessibility gate that Drupal core is having. Obviously, there's a lot of things to improve on Drupal core, but everything that goes into Drupal core should respect this minimum accessibility level. I would like to say that more like a statement. Long-term involvement has a huge impact on the project. It means that maybe you don't have, I don't know, 20 hours per week to contribute to Drupal. But if you show up over time, it means that you will have all this background information with you, all this knowledge that you will be able to put into the table to any conversation. So it is important. And we need people to move forward the project. And for these people being able to be involved in the community, maybe we need also companies that are supporting these people with time for being involved. Because I don't know you, but personally, there's been a moment in my life that I really want to have my weekends. So having the option that most of the two main companies that I've worked over the years while I've been working in Drupal, they gave me the option to contribute to Drupal. I am able to contribute several hours per week. It doesn't mean that I am 40 hours working on that. It means that I have the option over the time to do that. So this is important. If you see one of your employees interested on that, maybe supporting that person is going to make a huge change for you. And contribution is having more visibility over the time for companies. I'm not talking about commit fishing. I'm talking about meaningful contributions, people that is helping in Drupal over the time. So please, if you have a company, if you want to contribute to Drupal, ask maybe your company, maybe they are willing to help you and support you. So next step probably will be, if you want to contribute, just go to the strategic initiatives and see what is going on. The strategic initiatives are the ones that has been decided that are, at least for now, the important ones. But there are a lot of other initiatives being cooked, other proposals being done on the ideas issue queue. If you have an idea, just go in there and post your idea, or maybe just check if someone has already posted that soon before you. But organize with other people, and you might be able to help improve the project. If you're interested and you don't have any idea, you can just show up on the UX channel and on the UX meetings that we have regularly every week. You can actually show up on any of these two Slack channels for the Admin UI initiative, or actually you cannot show up on the Olivero Slack channel that is Drupal 9 theme, and any of those channels will be happy to have new people showing there and helping. And for today, if you want to help getting involved on the sprints after this session, just go and open your account on Slack. You really don't need an invitation for that. You can open your account in there and come to the Admin UI or the Admin UI design channels, and I will just ping me, and I will be happy to answer you. You can ping me. You can feel free to open me a DM either on Slack, where I'm Cristina, or you can open a DM to me on Twitter, where I'm Chumillas. So thank you. That's all that I had to say. And this is awkward because nobody's saying anything.
Thank you so much, Cristina. You know, the one big thing I think we're missing is applause. That's going to be the worst part of these virtual things, but I'm sure you're getting hundreds of applauses right now. So Thank you so much. I think we do have some questions, and I think Stephen Cross is going to be facilitating those questions. I do just want to say that I think this whole movement is very important. Very rarely do I get excited about design and Drupal as far as the admin theme goes, and it looks really great. So I'm hoping that there are a lot of designers on today's call who are excited to contribute. And again, to your point, Cristina, it's long-term involvement. If you can't join for the next 24 hours, trust me, you have plenty of opportunity to contribute to this and other initiatives. So thank you.
So, Cristina, we have a few questions in the Q&A. So if anyone has additional questions, you can type them in now. First, we have a few people that have taken advantage of using the Q&A box to give you applause and say thank you. So I pass that on to you. The first question, we have something from Bernard and Rose, and they're both asking the same question. Is early in your presentation, you were discussing user studies that you had done. They're wondering if the results and any documentation from those studies are available online anywhere.
Yes. Actually, the 3 or 4 studies, both of them have a post after that. There were several people involved. Actually, we tried to share the option to make this information available. One is from Suzanne at Evolving Web. Another, it was Jack Kennedy. No, I don't remember the name, but it was. I will share that later on Twitter or on the Slack channel. So there are several posts actually discussing and analyzing what are what things we find on each of those surveys. Actually, one of them was really interesting because on the one about the card sorting, we were expecting to solve how we were going to organize the new menu for users, and it turned out that the results were exactly the same structure that we have right now, because the people that was actually answering the questions were actually Drupal users. So people were expecting the same things organized the same way. So that's interesting. I will share the link later.
So for anyone listening, Cristina will share on those 2 Slack channels you see listed on the screen right now. That's where you can find that information later on. We have another question from Jerry. He writes, with many clients, they have the need to add and change some admin layouts. Will there be the possibility to specify regions and zones similar to how you do in a front-end theme? We'd be able to do that on the admin theme.
So right now we should be able to specify regions. The problem is that the moment that you do that, you are the owner of that region, and that changes. And that will probably be the same in the future. The moment that you are changing something in your project, you are the one responsible to maintaining that. So if you create a new region on the header, let's say, for example, you want a language switcher on the header because you have several regions that you want to switch from one to another, then you are the owner of that new region, and you are responsible of being sure that this new region is going to look like as you want. If we are going to create something that actually ships with several layouts, I don't have an answer about that. Actually, this is something that we have to discuss. And whatever we end up deciding is going to go through a solution that serves these 80% of cases that I was saying. So I'm not really sure if the 80% of the Drupal projects actually need new regions. So I really don't have an answer, yes or no. But at least for now, you have to own the changes that you make to the admin UI.
Thank you. We have another question from Azim. He asks, will the 7 admin theme be retired or replaced entirely by Claro in the future?
So the initial idea was completely removing 7 from Drupal core, but that was when we decided that Claro was going to be stable by Drupal 9, and we weren't able to actually reach that goal. So it means that until Drupal 10, probably, unless there is any different decision over the time, we won't be able to get rid of 7, because only with Drupal 10 we are going to deprecate features, and probably 7 can be considered a feature, because anybody that is installing Drupal 9 right now, they are probably going to choose either Claro or 7. But if they choose 7, we can't just say to them, no, in 2 years or in 1 year and a half, we are going to get rid of 7, because we can't do that. So until Drupal 10, 7 will stick in there.
Okay, Jerry has jumped back in to clarify his question, and he says, will it be possible to change the regions and zone layouts through the UI? That's specifically what he wanted to know.
Okay. It depends on what are you thinking. If you're thinking, for example, about, let's say, I don't know, the page to create new image styles. This is going to be the same always, or at least for now, unless someone wants to actually change it. If you actually want to have different node forms or node form layouts, ideally, this is something that you should be able to customize. So a view, for example, a view where you actually have, or a dashboard where you actually have several regions. Ideally, this should be customizable. You should be able to change that, but I can't promise something that we haven't decided yet, and that will need a lot of work. So ideally, yes. When? It depends on how many people actually show up and help making this reality.
Great, thank you. So we have a question from Ralph, and it's, are the planned and upcoming layout changes also discussed and worked on in Figma? And I'm not sure that you mentioned how the team is using Figma, so maybe you could talk about that as well.
Yeah, so Figma is basically being used so far for the design system. And also, if any of you will want to join later the contribution sprint and want a user on and want to help on the design, you will get a user to the Figma project, and you will see that there are different pages or different projects in there. And one of them is actually trying to find solutions for this layout. This conversation still needs to happen. We are planning to have an online workshop or something like that, an online long discussion, basically trying to figure out which thing we need to change. So, for example, what I was saying about this sidebar, is this sidebar going to be something just limited to the sidebar, or are going to be other regions on these initial changes available? So this is something that we need to discuss, and we haven't decided yet. So this needs to happen. And this is going, so far we've discussed this on the weekly meetings, both on the UX channels, which is all every week on Tuesday. It depends on your time zone. And on Wednesdays, we have the weekly calls for the Admin UI. And on each of that meetings, we've discussed that. So we need to have this conversation yet and make final decisions in this conversation. So it's going to happen on Slack. Okay, we have Anonymous asking a question. He says,
please ask Cristina to clarify her comment about freelancers no longer using Drupal 9 as they did with Drupal 7. And I see you smiling. You expected that coming. So maybe you could clarify that.
I just realized just after saying that, it was like, oops, I'm making assumptions, and that's not correct. I mean, my goal behind this comment was that the Drupal community is different from what we saw a while ago. Personally, I know a lot of people that I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, they were jumping between WordPress projects and Drupal projects. And nowadays, if they have to choose to create a website for a restaurant that only have 2 or 3 pages, probably Drupal is not the tool that they are going to use this small project. And I was referring more about these small projects, not about the freelance figure or the freelance person or developer. I was more thinking about these people that has small projects. They are usually not showing as much in the Drupal community as they were some years ago.
Okay, so Mike asks us, one of the painful things that we have to deal with often is the z-index conflicts with the admin toolbar. Will that be addressed with the redesign so the toolbar acts more like a frame and not part of the page so it doesn't break the layouts?
Well, this is actually obviously everything that you touch on Drupal has a lot of implications. There is actually one issue for that, famous word in a famous sentence in Drupal. There is actually one issue that is actually blocking 2 things for Claro right now. One is the contextual links, and the other is the toolbar. And this is an issue about where the CSS or where the styles for the toolbar and the contextual links, for example, or even the tour module, anything that actually interferes with the front-end theme, where this should live, and should it be replaceable by front-end themes? So this is a conversation that is still happening on the Drupal issue queue, and this is probably one of the things that hopefully will solve that.
And the last question of the day from Bernardo. From the features we saw today, should we expect one of them to be released, or maybe any of them, to be released anytime soon? And are there early prototypes?
I would say the thing that, for my experience, or what I'm seeing, what I'm seeing in the that is having more movement and more attraction, probably is the palette, or replacing the color module with the palette one. There is actually several proposals on the issue queue. There is actually a patch or a project that is implementing the CSS variables as an option to choose that. And actually, the Gene project, Gene theme that Sasha created, already does it. So I would say probably this is one of the things that we'll see sooner.